Hey everybody, it's Heidi Hope and it's FAQ Friday. Thanks for joining me this week. We have tons of good questions. For those of you who are new to FAQ Friday, we accept questions on our Facebook fan page, the business page, and also on Instagram. And Instagram really is the place to leave your question because nobody sees the Facebook posts anymore. I think the reach was like 100 people today out of 32,000 or whatever. So unless I want to pay to advertise it, which I don't, you have to leave it for me over on Instagram. And everybody saw it over on Instagram, so we have tons of questions this week. My Instagram is instagram.com/Heidi_Hope. My handle's Heidi_Hope. So find me over on Instagram. The party's moving over there anyways. Also, if you ever want to catch up on all the old episodes of FAQ Friday, you can find them on the learning site right now, HeidiHope.com/learning. You can also find them on our YouTube channel, which doesn't have a fancy URL because I can't figure out how to change the URL because there's already a Heidi Hope Photography URL that is not me. I've tried to write YouTube about this and they don't respond. So YouTube, if you're watching FAQ Friday, please tell me how to change my URL. Thank you. Okay, so let's get started on the questions this week. I'm going to just pull the first one here. Okay, this one is from Jay Snyder Photo on Instagram. First of all, love your work. How do you get such clean editing? Do you use any sort of actions or straight ACR? Mostly we use ACR, which is Adobe Camera Raw, and we use it in the same way that a lot of people would use Lightroom. So we're doing our preliminary edits in Adobe Camera Raw. So when a file's leaving, we shoot in RAW. When a file's leaving Adobe Camera Raw and going into Photoshop, I want it to look as close as possible to the final product as I can get it. We used to use a ton of actions and experiment a lot with them, and we still have fun playing with actions, but we've really tried to streamline our workflow and reduce the amount of time that we're spent editing, because editing takes hours anyways. We certainly don't need to add any more time onto the editing process, and our galleries tend to be much bigger now that we've kind of changed over to this process, which clients love. So we use Adobe Camera Raw to really synchronize files, batch edit things really quickly, and then we might use a little bit of, we have some favorite actions that we use in Photoshop that we might run on the back end just at a very low opacity, like 10 or 20%, that will apply to a whole gallery for consistency. But that look of that clean editing is really coming from Adobe Camera Raw, so you guessed it right. And then we synchronize everything in there so that it really all is a cohesive, the whole gallery is really cohesive from beginning to end. Great question. Let's pull another one. This one is from Laneyson on Instagram. There are a few locals near me that teach classes for moms that have fancy cameras. This gets me mad because I feel like those moms will just know how to take pictures themselves and won't book a professional photographer. What's your opinion on this? I'm confused on why these photographers want to teach moms how to use their camera. I taught myself, so can they, LOL. Okay, so I get this, but I think actually I probably will end up teaching classes to moms at some point too. I was thinking this would be fun for our studio to do someday when we have more time. But I don't think that there's anything wrong with this. This is why, because the fact is everybody's a photographer these days. Everyone can take good pictures. Like, cell phones can take really good pictures, and people, I mean, there's like billions of photos that are taken and uploaded every single week online. So photography has just become such a huge part of our culture that you have to think about why somebody is going to hire a professional. I always think about, you know, they're going to hire a professional for something they can't do themselves. They're going to hire a professional because they want to be in the images. They don't want to always be behind the camera. They're going to hire a professional because they don't have the time and they want somebody, they want a level of service that a professional can provide. They want somebody who can do everything for them from beginning to end. They want to hire a professional for the experience. And so those are all things that we can provide as professionals and really think of it more like a service industry. So honestly, I think teaching anybody how to use a camera is a great thing, because then they see how hard it is, how much work goes into it, and then they still get the pictures out of camera. Imagine if they knew how to edit too. teach them how to edit, because then they have to sit there in front of the computer and edit their photos for hours and hours and hours. And eventually they say, either I have lots of free time to make this my hobby and I want to do it and it's fun and fulfilling for me, which is great, or they say, I don't have 10 hours to shoot and edit photos of my own family, and I'm not even in any of the pictures. This is something that's really worth it for me to hire a professional for. And I feel that way myself, and that's why we'll have professional photographers shoot my family, or I'll have Mariah photograph us, because you don't always want to be the one taking pictures of your own kids, your own family. But it's nice to know how to do, and it's a way that you can kind of bond with your community, build relationships with them. So I don't discourage it at all. I get where you're coming from too. You need to find a way to offer something that people can't do for themselves. And that, I think, is to have a sustainable photography business in the current world of technology. And you know, everybody has fancy cameras now, and everybody has technology at their fingertips, so we can all create pretty cool stuff. So you have to provide something that people can't do for themselves. That would be my advice. Okay, good question though. That's a controversial topic. Okay, this one's from Erica. Can you talk a little more about Pinterest? How do you pin from your site? The Pinterest button on my website only links to my personal Pinterest. How do you get your photos on Pinterest and linked back to your website? Okay, so when you pin from your website, that pin should automatically link back to your website. When you pin anything from any site, it's going to get uploaded to a personal pin board, because that's the only way you can pin anything. It's going to go into your personal Pinterest. But that makes it public on Pinterest so people can see it, search for it. It's like a stream. So people who are following you will see all the material you pin, and then they can pin it, and then it can spread around Pinterest. And so that's exactly how I'm doing it. I'm just using a pin it button from my website or in my browser, and I pin it to one of my boards on my own Pinterest profile. All of my Pinterest followers are going to see it, but it's also going to be like become in the public sphere of Pinterestville. And then anybody who's looking, let's say I pinned it and it has a hashtag in the description, if somebody's searching for that hashtag, they're going to see it whether they follow me or not. So it does become like out there on Pinterest as well. The way to get a lot of your work on Pinterest is obvious. Pinning your own work helps, but you can only pin it once, and you just have to hope. You want to build your followers so people are seeing your pins and repinning your pins, and have interesting work on your website. Most of my work that's on Pinterest was not stuff that I pinned, but that other people went to my site and found and pinned. So increasing your search engine relevancy, you know, driving traffic to your site from other sources of social media, that will all help. And then you have to have work that people want to pin, and then that will spread it around on Pinterest as well. So I hope that answers your question. I think. Okay. Let me pull another one here. Okay, Wendy Lake Photography says, I enjoy your newsletters. I like your format too. Who do you use for email newsletters? Who in your office creates them, and how long does it take? I just can't seem to get into the routine of it. Newsletters are so time consuming. First, I do all our newsletters for the most part. I'm trying to have Karina start to take some of that over, our new administrative assistant out front. But I do a series of a few different newsletters. We have a studio newsletter that I'm trying to do more regularly. We have a learning newsletter. If you're not signed up for that, you can go to HeidiHope.com/learning, and there's little sign-up boxes everywhere. And that is geared towards photographers, so it's learning for photographers. There's that newsletter that I try to send out on an almost weekly basis. And then we also use the newsletter feature for like all of our workshop attendees, their welcomes, their workshop surveys, all that kind of stuff. All of that is managed and done through email newsletters. My newsletter provider that I use is MailChimp, which I love. I love them. Aweber is another good company. But yeah, they're really time consuming. It's hours to write a single newsletter, to format everything. But then once you have it all formatted, you can save that format as a template and reuse it. But you still have to go in and change all the pictures out, change all the text out. So it's certainly time consuming, but it is a form of marketing. And I always think with marketing, you have two choices for marketing. You either do it yourself and put the time in, or you pay somebody else to do it. Those are really the only two options for marketing. So you have to either have a marketing budget where you're spending money on it, or you have to say, I'd rather keep that in-house and do it myself. I've always loved marketing, so I have done that. I've done all the marketing for our business from the very beginning of the business. That was always something that I focused pretty heavily on. Good question. So MailChimp is the answer. Okay, Tanya622 is, my question is, do you have a name for baby? We don't yet. We have some front runners. We're trying to decide if we want to do another G name to match Juliana and Grace. They're both G's. So we're trying to decide if we go with another G name, or because it's a boy and we have two girls, we're thinking we don't have to go with a G. We could like mix it up and do something different, or maybe a Sean Jr. or something. We're really not sure yet. So we're tossing names around, but you guys will all know soon enough. You'll know as soon as we know. We didn't name Grace until like 2 days after. We were like, should we call her Grace? Yeah, let's call her Grace. And then we put it on the birth announcement and it was official. So, all right. Alicia Ann Photography from Instagram says, hi Heidi, this may seem like a weird question, but I'm an aspiring photographer who also lives in Rhode Island. I really want to take some workshops in the upcoming year and was wondering if you had a distance radius to be able to take any up-and-coming workshops in the future. Thanks and have a great weekend. No, we don't have a mileage restriction for any of ours. We have the online workshop, and then the 2016-2017 workshop schedule is going to come out later this year, probably by the end of the summer. And you really want to be a newsletter subscriber, so HeidiHope.com/learning, sign up for the newsletter, and you'll be the first to know about our workshop schedules when everything's released. We do have a waiting list for the next online workshop, Photographer Rising. That is, we have like hundreds of people on that wait list now, which you can sign up for on photographerrising.com. So a lot of these are going to sell out fast, so you want to make sure that you're on the newsletter list so that you hear about them first and can sign up for them. But what's really cool, I'm excited about this, releasing them early this summer, kind of a year, at least a year in advance, allows us to do some like longer payment plan options, so really flexible payment plans, which I think everyone's going to be excited about. Okay, let's do, what time is it? We'll do 2 more questions. I have a lot left in here, so if I don't get your question this week, please resubmit it next week, so don't be afraid to just post the same question again. I just can only get to so many every week, but if it's a question that I've answered recently, I will pull it out of the mix. So you got to go back and watch some of the old episodes too and see what we've talked about. But I do try to get to everything eventually, so if I don't get to it this week, head over to Instagram and resubmit it under the new call for questions next week. Okay, this one's from Joanna6461 on Instagram. My question is, for the amateur photographer mom on a budget, what would you recommend for a lens? I use a 50mm 1.8, but I want something to complement it or something better. Thank you so much. I love FAQ Fridays. Okay, well first I love the 50mm, so that would have probably been my first recommendation anyways. That's probably our most used lens at the studio, and I think it's a great distance for young children, because once you start getting longer, more into the telephoto range, it's harder to connect with a young child and get them to smile at the camera. So you're shooting with like 85 and above, it starts to get harder to maintain their attention. So while I love the look of longer lenses, like I'd love to use my 70-200 and shoot at 200 for a baby shoot and have a beautiful, nice soft background, unfortunately it's really hard to engage with your subject. So if parents are looking for that image where the child's smiling at the camera, it's very difficult to get at 200, the distance you need for a 200mm lens. So what I recommend probably, if after the 50, is going into a wider angle lens, especially if you're a mom and you're shooting in your house a lot and you're shooting indoors. Obviously a wide maximum aperture is good, so anything that's down in like the 2s for maximum aperture or the 1s is really good, so that you can work in low light situations. But I would say a 35 if you're going to buy a prime, or a 24-70 is amazing. It's definitely not a budget lens though, it's an expensive lens, but you get so many different focal lengths within it that you don't need to buy a bunch of individual lenses. You could use a zoom lens and get a lot of range out of it. But yeah, something in the wide angle range, and I love 35s. If you're a full frame sensor, if you're not a full frame sensor, you can go even wider than that, like a 24. And I think you'd have fun with that inside your house, taking pictures of your kids, and it's just a great range for little ones, and for families, and for landscape stuff. So, okay, let's take one more question. It's going to be... Okay, this one is from Deb. Love FAQ Fridays. Please don't ever stop. My question is, with the established pricing you already have had for your business that worked for you, why did you start offering lower price sessions? Thank you, Heidi Hope, for the inspiration and drive you give to each of us. Great question, Deb, and I think somebody else asked something similar to this. So we started offering shorter sessions is what we did. So our product guide has some smaller packages that fit shorter sessions, but we, for a long time, offered just these larger sessions. Like our typical session has 2 to 3 sets. It's at least an hour session. Everything's very ornate and detailed. We do tons of customization. You guys see all that kind of ornate stuff on our Facebook page. And that's great. That's like our core client base. But now that we've been in business for over 6 years, a lot of our clients are growing up. Their kids are school-aged. They've come to us 3 or 4 or 5 times. And they don't necessarily need a 75-image gallery with 3 sets and 3 different outfits and all this stuff to choose from and all this wall art. And you know, their walls are getting full and they have a lot of artwork already, which is amazing, but they just want a few updated photos of their family. Or maybe they're coming for a newborn and a first birthday and they really want 6 month photos, but they don't really need to make a huge investment. They want something that's just a small, quicker session that captures a certain milestone. Or for the holidays, maybe they just want Christmas cards and they don't really need another portrait for the wall. And so we created these shorter sessions to really cater to that client base. We also have 3 full-time photographers, so we can take on that amount of volume, the shorter sessions and the longer sessions. I would say if it was just me as a single photographer, I probably wouldn't have made that change because we wouldn't have the time to do it. But with 3 of us working, you know, being able to shoot full time, we can take on that volume, and we can kind of cater to a wider customer base than we were catering to before. So that's why we made that change moving forward, just to try to accommodate more families that have different needs than our bigger, longer, more ornate sessions. So. And so far it's been really great. Actually, the shorter sessions are some of my favorite. I've been doing a lot of baby milestone sessions, like the 6 month age is just so perfect for that. They don't need a long time to get beautiful portraits. They're just so cute. They don't last a long time anyways because they get tired. But it's just a perfect way to, you know, capture those milestones and in a quick way that's really convenient for mom and dad. So we've been loving them. It was a good move. All right. Thank you for all your questions this week. Don't forget to sign up for the newsletter, which I've said 500 times. It's HeidiHope.com/learning so you can stay up to date. There is no FAQ Friday next week or the week after. Next week I have a shoot in Boston. The week after that we have the Photographer Rising retreat, and there is 1 seat left for that. We had 1 student transfer out, so we have 1 seat if you want to snag it. And this is the only time we're ever running this particular workshop. So it is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'm so excited about it. It's really the best workshop that we've ever planned, so I'm pretty psyched. For that, that's in 2 weeks, and then we'll pick up FAQ Friday after that. As always, don't forget to leave a comment down below and let me know that I'm not talking to myself. You can just click the little thumbs up and let me know what you thought of this week's episode. Have a great weekend, and I will see you in three weeks from today, I guess. Bye, everybody.